What is going on, guys? Joey Francis here of Flex Training Systems. And today we're going to be talking about your training program. It's interesting. I always get these weird emails about people that ask me, sometimes occasionally you'll get people that they just want a program and they don't want coaching. And I feel like there is somewhat of a disconnect, or just somewhat of a misunderstanding between what goes into a program and the coaching experience and just getting better as a lifter as a whole. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today in hopes that we can help those listening sort of understand the picture a little bit better, so they sort of know what to expect from a program and what to expect from a coach, or just how much of each at which stage in your career is going to help you get to where you need to go. This is kind of like a bonus video. I didn't plan on putting out a video, but I didn't get to do my stream, and I made a commitment to do something on social media, so I was like, alright, I should probably do a video. Now, like I said, I get these emails, people saying, how much for just a program, right? The problem with just getting a program and trying to decipher the program, even if you have good direction, is you're not the one that created it. So unless you're inside the head of the person that created it, you're not going to know what to do in every scenario. Because, the amount of different situations or conflicts or things that can come up in a program, like, you're never going to be able to write everything down on a paper and say, hey, if this happens, do this. If this happens, do this. You can, you could do general things. But you're not going to be able to, you just can't cover everything, There's things that are going to happen in your life, and, you're going to be spending money on a program that you may have expectations, and those expectations won't be met without the coaching. I asked yesterday in my Twitch chat, or maybe it was the day before, I said, how many or what percentage of a lifter's progress comes from the program and comes from the coach? And we came to the conclusion that it varies, it changes. In the beginning, I would say a lot of the progress certainly is going to come from the coach, because the lifter and the coach are going to have to, and the beginning could be a year, 2 years, 3 years. The lifter and the coach are going to have to come together to create sort of their own language, their own sort of pattern of interaction. And eventually their minds will meld, and that lifter will know what the coach is looking for. It is a lot easier said than done. Once the lifter has that understanding, then I believe that most of the progress is going to come from the program itself. That's when the program sort of is like the main focus of it. As far as coaching goes, you're always kind of refining technique, little tweaks here and there, kind of making sure they're moving in the right direction. When they go through the ups in their training, you're making note of that, telling them that, like, this is to be expected. When there's downs in the training, it's the same thing. You're explaining to them, like, hey, like, maybe they, people will send me videos and they're like a little bit weaker than normal. Sometimes they have a comment on it, sometimes they don't, and I'll explain to them, I'll look at their program and be like, oh, we're really ramping on volume, so these days they're going to, take a hit or whatever, and just make sure they understand what's going on. So in that sense, there is still coaching going on. You could argue that it's 50-50 the entire time, but, I will say, like, in off season for my super experienced lifters, I'm not going to lie, I don't have to be as on them. I don't need to be on them every 5 seconds, or anything like that. And then as we get closer to a meet, you really want to make sure that you're moving in the right direction. You want to do this at all times, but there's times when I get to be extra about it, right? Where you really want to make sure you're on your P's and Q's. You want to make sure your form is tight, and that you're just on point with recovery and everything like that. And then eventually when you get to meet day, um, that's when coaching, especially if you're in a weird situation where you have, not a weird situation, if you're in a competitive situation, we have multiple lifters that are extremely close together. For example, the 105 class at Nationals, where everybody's literally like the same strength. That's where you really have an opportunity to shine as a coach, just making the right calls, putting the lifter in a position where they could simply focus on being a power lifter. They shouldn't be stressing about numbers. They shouldn't be stressing about what the opposition is doing. They should just be focusing on getting to the platform, competing, blowing up their weights, making sure they're taking their Gatorades and all those things. I mean, if anyone that's been in a primetime session that's had me there, I usually have a bunch of people with me so that I can just focus on using my brain. And I'm pretty pushy when it comes to like, hey, make sure you're eating. Hey, make sure you're drinking this, drink this. Maybe I go get them a Gatorade or I go get them Skittles or whatever. And I'm just really on them, just to make sure that they're just focusing on execution, and then they can even be in the position to lift the weight that I'm going to call. So like I said early on, I would say, it's kind of 50-50. Maybe a lot more coaching is happening and the program is there. It's like a roadmap, but there's a lot of interaction, especially that first month. And then over time, really, really, really the opposite end of it is like the program is, becomes more of it because you're just using the program to kind of guide everything. The technique is already refined. They already know how to use RPE. They're taking care of themselves outside the gym and you don't really have to do much. And I'm just kind of like making sure that everything is just overseeing basically. But we can always refine things. And I actually think that when we're in those periods where you are kind of on autopilot is where we can really, come upon, you really can make a breakthrough, or you really can refine someone's technique or something like that. I mean, okay, I always bring up Russ because you guys know him and he's an example that I can bring up and you guys can look up to him. I can bring up Amanda too in this case. But until recently, somebody, he was just on a podcast and they made a comment about how good his depth looks. That is an ongoing thing that we're doing all the time. It is not just like, I'm constantly trying to find ways to make his, lifts undeniable. And, it takes time to get there. Squatting is like one of those things where you could move how you want to move, but over time you just need to keep doing it. You're gonna build stabilizers like around that movement. You're gonna make little tweaks to footing. For the most part, your squat's not really gonna change that much, but those little things like turning your feet out, strengthening the quads a little bit, just to make things more complete so you don't tip forward as much. Certain warm-ups that you do to help you get into position to actually hit depth. All these things, man, I could talk about squats all day. I really could. But all these things to really just become a technician, it takes time, and there may be times when you comment on it and you need to make comments on it. And there may be times when, they just need to train it and things are going to come up and you're going to tweak things here and there. Maybe you want to try things. But a lot of the changes to his squat, a lot of the changes to Amanda being in flats and things like that, it's happening. It's happening because we have this downtime. I mean, that is the time for it. Maybe somebody's squatting and they're like not as perfect as I would like, but we have a competition in like 5 weeks, 4 weeks, and I'm like, you know what? This is pretty solid. We're gonna hit depth. I don't want to change it. Let's just get strong here and focus on that. You know what I mean? You got to choose where to allocate energy. You got to choose what to stress about, what not to stress about. I mean, stressing in general is kind of a negative thing, but you guys know what I mean. And this also reminds me of why it is so important that people do the research on people before they hire them. Do they have credibility? Have they shown that they can take someone from A to B time and time again? Is the program made? If a program is made and it has the lifter's goals in mind, and you're taking what you're thinking with that lifter, where you want them to be, and you're using your own language, and you're translating that down on paper and you're teaching that language to that lifter, then I think that lifters, that program is going to be great for them. They're going to get to a great spot, and that is like, even though, I mean, a 3x5 at an 8, fucking everybody's going to eventually do a 3x5 at an 8 on their program, right? But the weights are going to be different. The mindset behind it is different. The context is different. There's so many other things that go into a program other than what's down on the paper. I guess what I'm trying to say with this video is that, like, there's times in a program, especially close to a meet, a taper, things, shit like that, program's super, super, super fucking important. But there's times when programs aren't going to really look that different across the board, but the thought behind it and the weights, the individual weights that are being used, the sets that are being done with the cues that were given, or the way that you're supposed to, treat each session, or there's just so many other things that go into it. I just want people to get away from thinking like a 3x8 on squat is a 3x8 on squat, two people doing the same thing. No, man, there's so much more that goes into it, other than just like what's on the paper. But there are times when the paper is like crucial. So one of the takeaways from this video, you just have to understand that, like, the program is sort of a map of where you're going to go. And there are times when that map is going to be, like, when you kind of get lost, that map is super important. Maybe you get a little bit down on yourself and you're like, I want to go off the map, but you got to stick to it. And then the coaching is just going to kind of facilitate that path sort of happens. And that map can change, That map can change. That map may not always look the same. I always tell people, you could give me a random lifter with like a random, like, shitty, not shitty, but like a decent generic program, and I could probably coach them up and get a lot out of it, right? I could probably do that. But there's going to be a point where that shitty program is just not going to do anything. You're going to have to, you could refine the technique, you could get the most out of it, but the program is going to have to evolve. Just like the technique evolves, just like things like that evolve. So I would say, if I had to speak generally, and this is going to vary from person to person, in the beginning, a lot of coaching, a lot of interaction, a lot of big tweaks, schedule changes, things like that, identifying accessories, what needs to go where, bringing up weak points and things like that. And then towards the end, you pretty much know all that stuff. You're refining small things here and there. You're just making little tweaks to get bigger results and stuff like that. Running through your checklist, like recovery checklist and things like that. Water, food, protein, sleep, carbing up at the right times, taking deloads when you need them, shit like that. Understanding when to be strong and all that. That becomes more the focus. The program sort of becomes almost automatic. And then occasionally you can throw in things here and there. But yeah, so the program itself, I don't know. I think people just like to have something tangible. They just like to look at something and have something in front of them. And that's great. When I write myself a program, which I fucking never do, which I should, I get really excited to run it. But it truly it is a beauty to me. It is an amazing thing. Can be a powerful thing when you have a lifter coach that are very synergistic, in how they sort of interact and apply their language and their findings to a program, and then just the coach sort of seeing that program out, getting the feedback from the lifter and getting them to this place of, like I talked about in that other video, I think it was 2 videos ago maybe, you sort of reach this place of like you can't even put words on it. It's just this relationship that you have between program, coach, lifter, and lifestyle that just makes you unbeatable. You're just gonna smash everything in front of you. A little bit of a philosophical-ish type of video. I hope you guys are able to take something away from that. This is me sort of making up for missing my stream earlier today. But yeah, a program is, it's very hit or miss without the proper, guidance, and especially if that person isn't communicating with you. For powerlifting specifically, if you're a bodybuilder, I mean, I'm sure coaching can help that too, but it's not nearly the same because the idea is more so like hypertrophy, and there can be periodization, but it's just with a different goal in mind. Um, but yeah. So yeah, guys. I hope you're able to take something away from that. I hope you don't mind hearing my voice on a Friday. Um, if you guys have not already, I posted a podcast with the boys. That's my last video before this one. If you are a regular viewer of my Twitch stream, possibly Sunday, or if not early next week, announcement. But yeah, I'm rambling at this point. That means it's time to cut it. Can we get a hashtag coach 'em up? Hashtag coach 'em up in the comments below. And I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.